Honestly unbalanced.
It's really hard, isn't it? But I think when
It's
you
really
have
hard.
kids, we're new parents, but everything else goes out the window. As
Mm.
your priority is you want that child to be safe and happy and healthy, and whatever they're going to eat, they just need to eat it.
Yeah, and I don't want him just to be eating fish fingers and chips, for crying out loud, you know? So if that means that one of the things he enjoys and that he will eat is a bit of lamb right now, that's okay, you know? And I'm just relaxing my views around it for him to try and, help him be healthy and happy.
You've been influenced by loads of yoga styles along the way, haven't you? Because I know you've done
Mm,
Forest, Jivamukti, Bikram. Am I
yes.
missing any?
I mean, I did like yoga therapy training years and years ago as well. I did antenatal. Yeah, I've kind of done a lot of it. The forest training, actually, I didn't do the full teacher training. I did like a 10-day teacher's immersion like years ago. Yeah.
They're quite emotional places, aren't they? I've never been to a Forest yoga
I
event,
mean,
but
look, I don't, like forest wasn't for me, just wasn't for me for whatever. I didn't resonate with me, but the Jivamukti really did, probably because they're a little rock and roll, Sharon and David, and plus they've got this environmental passion and care for the planet and everything living in it, and that really resonated with me. So, and of course, Bikram was my very, very, very first teacher training back in 2001, believe it or not. So, have you seen the Netflix documentary Bikram Guru
yes.
Predator?
Oh my
Right.
God.
So
Yeah.
I wasn't in that because I was, my time was before all of that stuff, but I was definitely, in the hot pants and the bra tops, sweating with like 200 people on my teacher training. I mean, I had a great time, a great time.
Was it? I know you're very much into your exercise and keeping fit. So was it that got you into the yoga world, as it were, and took you to your first yoga class?
So my first ever, I lived in Japan for like 5 years. I was a pole dancer in my 20s,
Were
early
you?
20s.
Oh, did
Yeah,
not
man.
read
Did you
that
not know
anywhere.
that,
We
Adam?
didn't come across this in our
I
research.
think I knew your like Japan era was debauched. I didn't know you were a pole
Yeah,
dancer
yeah, yeah. I was a pole.
though.
So my journey started as a pole dancer in Japan for 5 years. Yeah, I mean, this is going
Amazing.
back some time. So this would have been like mid 90s. And that's what I did. And I got all, I did really well and had a very hedonistic lifestyle and a lot of money because in Japan at the time, I'm very blonde, I'm very fair, I'm very petite. They really liked that. So I did really, really, really well. I was like cashing in. And it was a time where there wasn't loads and loads of foreigners. It was the first pole dancing club in Osaka, which was the second or third biggest city in Japan, and it was the first pole dancing club. And this was for foreign women, basically, like gaijin, the alien women. So there we were, the alien women, kept cashing in on the trade, as it were, at the time. And it was so much fun, guys. It was just so much fun. Looking back on my life now, it was like very hedonistic, very fun, lots of partying. Like it was good. It gave me independence, taught me about my sexuality, and I had a really, really empowering, wonderful time doing it. And obviously that was before it became like a trendy thing, which, I think even, I don't know, 10 years later, Kate Moss was doing pole dancing classes. It became mainstream, didn't it? But
Yeah.
this was like pre-mainstream. So there's big bucks to be earned. And actually with that money, that money paid for me and my partner Dallas at the time to go on the Bikram yoga training. And anyway, so when I was in Japan, the girl who I worked with used to do yoga like in the staff room before we were getting ready for work. And I'd be like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm doing yoga. She was from Brazil. And I was like, can I join in? And she used to sort of try and teach me a little bit. And I liked it. And then when I left Japan and I went to live in Australia, in Sydney, I went to my first like proper yoga class. And I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And like instantly, I was like, I'm going to teach this. I just knew. And then I started practicing it every single day. Then I moved to Vancouver, nomadic. I've lived everywhere. And then I found around the corner from my house, I lived in a place called Kitsilano by the beach in Vancouver. And it was by the very first ever Lululemon shop, little Lululemon shop, and the first ever Bikram yoga studio in the whole of Canada. And I went to a class and I came out and I was like, what the hell was that? Like, it was like small carpets on the floor, no showers, sweating like you look like you'd come out of the shower. And I absolutely fell in love with it. I loved it. The mental benefit that you get from it and all of that. And then I went on his training 3 months later, and that was my first teacher training, which I also really enjoyed.
But yeah, Japan's in a funny place now, isn't it? In terms of like functioning society, everyone there is old and everyone's left.
Yeah,
and I think that's part of it. Although they like the novelty of the foreigner. From what I understand, in the culture, you'll always be the foreigner.
Yes, that's
And
the
so
Gaijin means alien.
So people don't move there, meaning that they've got this like ridiculous aging population now. So that was Bikram was your first encounter, and did that inspire you to create Yogahaven? The hot side of things.
I definitely love the heat. I'm like someone that's always cold. Like your log fire looks very appealing right now. And I'm always someone that wants to be warm. And so I did love the heat, but I didn't like the dogma attached to Bikram. And I spent a lot of money on that training, had a great time, came out of the teacher training, and I was offered 12 classes a week on the timetable the next day, literally after 2.5 months of being in LA with Bikram, because it was like 2.5 month training. Came back, 12 classes a week on the timetable. So, they needed teachers, but I only taught it for 6 months. And then I went to Hong Kong to live in Hong Kong and taught at Pure Yoga, which are the big Asian brand. They were just starting out. And I worked for them. They had a couple of sites in central Hong Kong and Causeway Bay. And it was there that I was like, I'm going to have a yoga studio. I want my own yoga studio. And I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get it because I didn't have a lot of money, because I'd used a lot of my savings. And I decided, well, I'll probably need to be back in the UK to do it, because I was going to think about raising some funds. And I came back to the UK, and Ads, you're from Birmingham, and I grew up in Worcestershire and Wolverhampton, lived in Birmingham. And I went back to Wolverhampton, was living with my friend, and I was like, I want to open a yoga studio. And I'd been living in all of these amazing places around the world, by the sea. A lot of the time I was by the sea, and I'm a water baby. I love the ocean. And I was like, where am I going to live? And she said, I think you'd like Brighton, because Fatboy Slim does really great beach parties. And I was like, that sounds good. And it's by the sea and it's quite bohemian. So I decided to come to Brighton, and that was in 2003. I opened the first Yogahaven. Yeah.
And how hard is it? Because nowadays, getting the funds for yoga studio would be really hard, unless you're doing something massive and you've got big backing. It would be almost impossible. Like, how did you manage to get it as a Bikram teaching pole dancer? Like, how did you persuade anyone to give you money?
With not many savings left. So the first thing I did was went to my parents and was like, you haven't seen me for 10 years. And this was like, I think we were just getting mobile phones when I first came back to the UK. So they hadn't really heard from me. It was like pre-mobile phone, pre-email. So I used to contact them, which would be every 3 months. I'd have to buy an expensive calling card and go to a hotel and call them. So they never really heard from me. This is the thing when you're parents, your children will just go and you have to let them be free and hope, Anyway, but we were not as connected, were we, back then, which was also quite lovely in some ways. But I came back and I said, oh, can you remortgage your house and give me some money? And they were like, no, no. And my dad, he was a well-known poker player, and he was just like, always like, you got to do your own thing, kid. Just go and do your own thing. So I tried to get a loan from the bank. They were like, no, because you don't own a thing. The only thing I owned, as soon as I came back, I bought a 1974 Mini Cooper. And it was £500 from a little old lady called Betty. Nobody had ever sat in the back seat, and I named the car Betty after her. And that's all I had, a little £500 really cool Mini Cooper. And the bank were like, anyway, no way. And then I very determined personality. And I was like, I'm going to find a way, I'm going to find a way. And I found a scheme called the Loan Guarantee Scheme that the government were running, where basically I borrowed only £30,000, only £30,000. And the bank, it's guaranteed by the government. So the bank gave me the money. I had £10,000 left in my savings, and I opened the first yoga haven on £40,000, which would not put a cleaning cupboard in a place now. You know what I mean? It doesn't buy you anything. And that's how it began, really. And it was sort of spit and sawdust. I taught loads of the classes with my friend at the time, my partner at the time, Dallas. Did all the reception, did all the marketing, did all the cleaning, did everything. And I just wanted one studio, and I didn't ever have a plan ever for it to grow. Like, that was never the plan. That I had a very, very basic business plan. And it was just all about having one site to practice in, to teach in. And yeah, I never looked beyond that. I also, probably because I had the poker player father, never, ever, ever thought that I would fail. And I take risks. And I don't have the fear factor, which is why I guess that I've ended up going on and doing what I've done, because I don't, certainly at that stage in my life, I didn't fear failure. It just didn't ever enter my head.
And what I find it very, very hard for most yogis to find that balance between striving and wanting to do well, but almost the more you practice yoga, the more you feel actually, no, everything's okay. And I guess that's our struggle sometimes, is often actually I've got everything I want. Do I really need to push hard and work hard, and push further? Actually, everything's okay. So how would you find that balance as someone that practices yoga but also is a business owner that then ends up expanding?
Yeah, I think, like, with the yoga philosophy and all of that, like, be happy with where you're at, be content with where you're at. There's full of contradictions, isn't it? Because it's like, don't get attached to the end result. But then, you're working towards like something in the philosophy. So it's full of contradictions. But I think for me, it was very organic. It wasn't necessarily, I didn't come with this big business plan to open. At one time, I had 6 studios. Now we have 5. But I never came with this big plan. It was very, very organic growth. And I think that I get bored really easily. And I like to have I like to do new things. I like projects, whether that's a house project. I've done up this house that I live in. And somebody came around the other day and they were like, was it loads of work? And I was like, well, it took a few months, but it didn't feel like work. And she was like, would you do it again? And I was like, I'd do it tomorrow. Like, I like a project. So it never, ever, ever felt like work. It didn't even really feel like, being in business, really. It was just something very organic. And I'm not actually attached to I was never attached to the financial part. It wasn't about the numbers, like the profit. It was never about that.
That's made me think slightly oddly, and it's like tangent, that we always say you shouldn't compare your life to others for many reasons, but also when you compare someone's journey, you have to factor in their personality type.
Yeah.
And someone could have gone on that exact same journey as you, on that exact same path, the exact same success. They might have hated it every step of the way and saw every day of it as hard work. And externally, it would appear exactly the same path. But someone could have had such a worse experience. And
I mean, exactly. That's such a good point. And, it just never, ever felt like work. And it still doesn't feel like work. I don't get stressed about it. I just genuinely don't. Like,
that's so nice.
I don't do social media. Like, I get someone to do it, obviously, but
that's probably quite clever in terms of ways to avoid stress in your life.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one.
We're talking about this today, weren't we? Just blast up social media. Is there anything that you would do differently, Ali? Looking back, is there anything you would change, or are there any regrets along the way?
That's a really good question. I would say no, really. Honestly, I would say not. It's kind of put me on the spot because I'm trying to think, but I don't think I regret anything. I feel like what maybe has happened that I feel proud of is that I have very good relationships with the people that have always worked for me. And you know, we're still friends. I know I haven't seen you, Adam, for a long time, but you know, I class you as a friend, and you worked at Yogahaven, and I see what you're doing and so proud of you. And I think that hopefully I've been quite grounded because I'm not attached to maybe the very driven business side. It's just something happened organically. And I feel like I've been really lucky with the people who have come into my life and been part of the community and the teachers. And, you know, it's just been really wonderful to be like, have this community. Yeah.
And that is very rare in a city, isn't it, to have community? I think it's quite rare in the UK, full stop. And the bigger the city is, the harder it is to have community. When I teach around Europe, and it's a small studio, let's say, everyone knows each other. Everyone's hanging out. Everyone's going for coffee afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's really really rare, you know. And the teachers generally like ships in the night. Like you see names on the schedule, we've got no idea who anyone is in the bigger studios.
Yeah.
But it's
No,
hard.
I feel like we're a family. And like I actually saw lovely Nick from Hot Pod at Elodie's wedding, and I haven't seen him for 10 years, and he's obviously gone on to do so well, and obviously worked at Yogahaven and did the Yogahaven teacher training, and it was so wonderful to see him. And it's like I still have those bonds with people like yourself, like that I just don't see. And you know, did you know I got diagnosed with breast cancer?
Yes.
Yeah, so when that happened in my life, which is 4.5 years ago, and I'm good, I'm healthy and nearly at the 5-year remission thing. When that happened, you suddenly have this like very clear perspective about life. And apart from obviously my family being at the top, the most important thing in my life after that was the Yogahaven community and the people that worked there and, you know, practiced there. And it was very obvious that is something very deep in my heart that I'm just so grateful for.
That's lovely.
Lucky.
Is Nick still really handsome?
He's got a big beard. I didn't recognize him. I had to look. He was like, Allie. I was like, who are you? Oh, you. Yeah, he is.
But that's wonderful to have to build something like that in those moments you didn't think, actually, I hate it, I want to quit. Because that happens to a lot of people, don't they? When they have these kind of life affirming experiences, they think, actually, my life, I'm wasting my time. I need to leave all of this stuff behind and sell the company.
Yeah, I didn't feel any of that because I'm blessed, aren't I? I'm just blessed. I'm just so honored and blessed to be able to still be doing it. And yeah, you know, and the other thing was like, I'm so lucky to have Crystal as my business partner. So Crystal owns part of Yogahaven with me. And like, we've been friends. We met on the beach in Brighton, like, I don't know, 19 years ago or something. And we're in business together. We're like sisters and we are so close. And it's such a beautiful, pure friendship and business relationship. And I'm just so lucky to have her. And that's very unique, I think, to have been, because we opened Clapham, 2010, 2011. And I've worked with her since then. And yeah, I'm really blessed to have her in my life.
What do you put down kind of your nature to and your easygoingness? Because that is a big part of who you are, that you don't give off any kind of stressy vibes. You're quite easygoing and you attract those people. What do you put that down to? Have you always been that way?
You should see me when I'm shouting at my 2.5-year-old. I'm like, I do have the fire as well, right? I have the fire. I don't know. I am a pretty easygoing person. I guess that I've got the risk-taking confidence that my dad imparted on me, and I had a very, very laid-back, gentle Irish mother. And I you know, I lost them a long, long time ago to cancer as well. And I guess that I was very fortunate to have really wonderful parents. Yeah.
Just to backtrack a little bit, a question that I was interested to know your views on. You said that you took your teacher training after just 3 months of practicing. So what have your views on that changed? If someone was coming to practice at your studio, wanted to do a training after 3 months, would you advise them not to and practice a little bit longer, or would you just tell them to go for it?
I mean, that was a very different time where there was no such thing as yoga. Well, I don't think Yoga Alliance was around then. And certainly there was no such thing as a 200-hour thing that Yoga Alliance just made up. And you know, they're not a governing body, and people think they are, and it's misleading. But there was no sort of rules or regulations around doing teacher training at that time, 21 years ago. Or when was it that I did? Like longer than that, wasn't it? 22 years ago. Now I would say now, quite honestly, I think on our website it might say make sure you've been practicing for a year or two. But the reality is, if somebody practices every day for 3 months and gets really into it and reads all the books, why can't they do a teacher training? If somebody's been practicing it for 8 years, never read a book, does a class like once every, I don't know, couple of months, doesn't take it seriously. I mean, yes, we do sort of say you need to have 12 months experience, but the reality is, I don't think you can 100% say you can't come because you've only been doing it 3 months if they've really been into it for 3 months, you know.
There is so much nuance to it, isn't there? It can't be drawn down to numbers, and it's the same with teachers. You know, some places will say, you know, you can only teach we're only going to have teachers that have taught for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, and you will lose some good people to the net. Like, it is safe to some degree, but you will lose some good teachers with those kind of policies.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was 5 years into teaching, you know, some teachers would look down on me slightly. Like, well, you haven't been teaching long enough. No, but I've been teaching 26 classes a week for 5 years, and half the weekends in a year I've been teaching international workshops. Like, I've probably done a lot more. I've probably taught a lot more yoga than you in more circumstances that requires me to be better. In that, if I'm not good, people won't come and I lose loads of money. I had that judgment quite a bit.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? There's a lot of egos. But you know how I met my lovely Leon? So this is funny because Leon, Holly, I don't know if you know, but Leon's sport was the 10-meter platform diving. So he did the Tom Daley event, and he's a silver medalist. And to be a diver, you've got to be really gymnastic. You hold, you know, handstands at the edge of the 10-meter platform, super gymnastic, flexible, strong. And he, after he retired, because in 2008 he hung up his budgie smugglers, and he was told, like, don't do any diving whatsoever, take up yoga or Pilates. And Pilates for him was a little slow at the time. He took up yoga and he got into Bikram yoga in London, and they refused to sign his form. I think you were meant to be practicing for like 6 months or a year. I can't remember the exact numbers, but because he hadn't been practicing that amount of time, they said, no, we can't sign your form. You can't go to the Bikram training, because by this time there was some kind of, you know, regulation. So he was like, well, actually, I'm probably better than anybody in the room here, so I'm going to do some kind of teacher training. And then somebody mentioned yogahaven, and 13 years ago, in January, just gone, 13 years ago, he came on one of my trainings, and then we fell in love, and we've been together ever since. Isn't that funny? So there you go. But that was an example of, like, you know, he did it every day for a good few months, and like, to be told, yeah, you're not good enough, you know, you can't.
But I guess the caveat, just like as a public service announcement, I would say, to the average person, I'd say make sure you've done a fair amount of yoga, and also done like workshops, like try to expand your knowledge through workshops and like maybe some retreats, etc. I think part of it is to build your knowledge. Part of it is just realize exactly what kind of training you might want to do, because if you just go to the first training you find, then maybe you end up in like some crazy forest training, which could be good for some people, but good for a very small amount of people. Or, you know, etc. Or you end up with a teacher, and I've seen that lots of times where people have done training, they've just jumped on the training, and the teachers are vastly different to anything they've ever practiced. And I think it's making sure you get to experience at least a little bit of who is teaching the training, or at least practice with some people they've been trained by.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
however, would you say an extension of that with the 200-hour, it doesn't really matter that much, because it's a stage one, and then stage two is then doing more teaching. Then after maybe 1,000 hours of teaching, then maybe doing training, further training.
Yes, it's the foundation, isn't it? Like the basic, like first course that you do, and then from that you go on and do your yin or your yoga therapy or your rocket or whatever. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Let's talk. So after your breast cancer and the
Oh,
treatment from that, then
yeah.
you decided you wanted a little baby. You wanted a baby as
No,
well.
no. So we had already been trying for a baby and we had been doing IVF and we had little, did the whole frozen embryo thing. And then dagger in the heart. Sorry, you've got breast cancer. So I was in the body holiday, actually. We put your name forward for that, didn't we, Leon?
Oh yeah,
In St. Lucia.
yeah.
Yeah.
We'd love to have gone. Unfortunately,
Oh,
I
it's
think
great.
it timed with Holly being pregnant.
Yeah.
And then now they don't let babies come, and we want to make sure we can be with Sunny
Yeah,
at every opportunity.
yeah. Well, I go there every December because Leon delivers beach fit, and I found a little lump, tiny little thing it was, in my armpit, just kind of where the breast tissue meets the armpit, so low armpit. And I just like instinctively kind of knew, I suppose, but then your ego gets in the way and you're like, oh, it's nothing. But I went to have it checked out, and then they said initially, I think they were really short staffed that day. I just went to the NHS that time, and they said, oh, I think it's okay, we'll make you another appointment, come back. And it put my mind at ease. So I missed the next appointment because I was in San Francisco in the red forest, doing some medicinal journeys. And I missed that second appointment, and then I noticed that it grew a little bit, but we're still talking like millimeters. So I went back. Then I have private healthcare because I'm a believer in, if you can afford to, you should, and take the pressure off the NHS and all of that. And I went straight through the private healthcare system, and they were like, we're really sorry you've got breast cancer. And at the time I had like a virus, not like a cold and a cough, but I felt quite tired and not quite right in my body. And I was like, oh, this is what's happening, because I'd had it for like 3 weeks. So I just like wrongly believed that, oh, I'm sick because it's breast cancer. And 3 days, honestly, I thought my life is over, I'm going to die. I had 3 days, the first 3 days of being told that I had breast cancer. I thought, because my parents had died a long time ago from cancer, very close together, oh, this is my time, I'm going to die of it. And and then I went to see the oncologist, and he was like, you found it really early, there's really great survival rates. And it was a really deep experience. And after that 3 days I had much more positive outlook, and I kind of not breezed it, but I had radiotherapy. The hard part was the hormone drugs that I was on for 3 years, which after 3 years I chose to come off. And that was really difficult for me because it really messed with my hormones and it sent me a bit crazy. It's like having PMT times 100 every day. And that was the hardest part. But I digressed a little bit, but we'd already started IVF when I got told I had breast cancer. So I then thought, oh, well, I'm never going to be a mom, because you're not meant to really carry a baby, ideally, if you've had a hormone-driven cancer because of your hormones in your system. So I spoke to the oncologist about it, and he said, if you're still thinking of doing it, then you really want to use a surrogate. But at that time, I wasn't ready. So I left it for a couple of years and just thought, well, I'm not going to do that. Didn't know anything about it. And then I was with two friends of mine who are a married gay couple, and they have had 2 children through surrogacy, and they really encouraged Leon and I to do it. And Siggy was actually born through surrogacy.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, an amazing journey.
So that was the story, yeah. So yeah, if anyone listening it's a deep experience, but being diagnosed with cancer. So I'm aware that if somebody listening, that's happened to them, it's a really, really scary place. So, it's hard to talk about it all on a short podcast,
Yeah.
But I'm always here if anyone ever wants to talk about that or needs support. And
Thanks for being so
surrogacy
open.
too,
Really
you know.
kind.
Yeah, it's not something people really talk about, surrogacy at all. I think Holly
No.
found with the miscarriage, actually, Holly did a lovely post about it, a lovely piece of writing. I think she wrote for a magazine, and just so many people came forward saying they've experienced it too, and had never spoke about it. And it's just this weird thing with pregnancy. Everyone just speaks about the perfect pregnancy. It's all easy. As a teenage boy, you're almost taught, if you don't wear a condom once, you're getting everyone pregnant. Every point,
aren't you? And then you find out it's actually can be really, really difficult, and you never get taught that.
Really difficult
yourself. So thank you so much for sharing that
story. No, I mean, it's good to share, isn't it? Because when I just really wasn't open to that idea initially, and then but when you don't have another choice, then you open your mind and your heart to something new and to do something a different way. And I guess I've always kind of been into doing things a different way. And it's more and more kind of growing in popularity in America, that's for sure. But over here, it's still not something that's spoken about that much.
This might be a weird question, but did you find it challenging, or was it a really beautiful experience, or how was
we
it?
were so blessed. So we were so blessed because once I made this decision to do it, I was like, how am I going to find a surrogate? Like, there's loads of people in my position, right? Loads of people that have had cancer and can't carry a baby and all of that. And I was just sort of feeling a little bit hopeless, but then I've got this crazy determined personality. So I was like, this is going to happen. And a friend of mine, the guy who encouraged me to do it in the first place, said, put yourself on this international website. And I think I put a picture of me and Leon with our dog Dexter, and a really, really wonderful lady called Marielle contacted us, and she said, I happen to be in London at the weekend and I'm meeting different intended parents. Do you want to meet? So I was like, yeah, sure. And it was in Leon, the fast food restaurant in Victoria Station. And as I walked up the stairs, because Leon and I were coming, my Leon were coming to meet her at Leon, but we were coming from two different directions. So I was there before him. And I walked up the stairs at the back of Victoria Station and I looked through the glass and it was quite busy, and I knew instantly it was her. And by the end of that, our conversation that we had, she was meeting other parents, intended parents, and I knew that it was going to work out. I just knew. And we walked away, Leon and I, and we were like, it's going to be difficult to connect with somebody how we just connected on that level, that kind of energetic level, with other people. I just kind of felt like it fitted into place, and we had such a positive experience with her. She's an incredible woman. She did it altruistically because they do not get paid very much at all.
Oh, really? I don't know.
Surprising. It was like £15,000, which is nothing. That's kind of the going rate. And she had 3 boys. She's got 3 wonderful boys. She wanted a natural birth, and that's what we had. And of course it was the pandemic, so we were told you can't go to the hospital, so we had to get a lawyer, and we had to go. I mean, it was quite barbaric, right? Women giving birth in the pandemic. That's a whole other conversation.
Everything was we the experience we had, it wasn't that. We had an experience with Holly. Can I say about the ectop?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, we would have had a COVID baby, but I had a miscarriage and then an ectopic pregnancy, which I'd originally thought was a second miscarriage. Then it turned out to be, it ruptured inside me a month later. So I ended up in A&E when I was teaching my first yoga class back in 2021.
But I couldn't go in either time. And there was one moment where we kind of suspected Holly was just crippled in pain. And the ambulance. So I called the ambulance, etc. I had to literally carry her downstairs into the ambulance. Then the doors were shut
for a long time,
for about an hour.
Wow.
And the ambulance was just there, and I could tell it was something really serious. And the ambulance just didn't move, and then eventually it drove off, and I didn't hear from Holly for 12 hours.
Brutal.
That is.
And I was like, if it's a rupture, and I was looking at if it's an ectopic rupture, the chance of death is not insignificant.
Horrendous. What a traumatic experience. Well, I mean, crazy things were happening, weren't they?
But you got in the end. You got into hospital.
Well, so we got a lawyer, and we contacted the hospital, and in the end they were supportive, and they let me in the room because I wanted to be the first one to have Ziggy in my arms. I wanted to cut the cord. I wanted him skin on skin, and all of that happened. And she was incredible giving birth to him. Like, oh, makes me feel really emotional. But she knows her body, and she knew what she was doing. A little bit of gas and air, completely. I mean, it was incredible. It couldn't have been any more beautiful and magical and positive. And then, so I had Ziggy, and then the lovely midwife said, I'm going to go and find your partner, because he wasn't really meant to come in the room, but they went and found him, and they brought him in, and he just burst out crying, and then he held Ziggy, and yeah, it's really beautiful, beautiful experience. So I'm forever grateful to Marielle, we call her Maz. And yeah, we're still in touch. We send pictures and videos all the time, and Christmas, birthdays, all of that. She'll always be in our lives, I think.
What an amazing thing to do for people.
Incredible, yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
Is that process like managed? Is there like not a governing body, but is there?
Yeah.
Are there rules to it?
Yeah, I mean, you're not meant to actually be giving people money. So it's like you pay for their expenses. So the money that she got monthly was for expenses, for her to be able to kind of do it. So that there are laws around it. And the clinic that we used in London, you have counselling, and they obviously test everything and kind of psychologically test you, and all of that stuff.
I think it's slightly weird question. Are you protected if for some reason that person like leaves the country, or like is there any kind of like legal protection?
It's quite archaic that the first I think it was the first 6 weeks she could have. Now genetically it wasn't her baby, she was the vehicle, the oven, right? So, and Leon was the biological father, but because she gave birth to him, she was seen as the biological mother, even though she wasn't genetically attached to the baby in any way, because we put the frozen embryo inside her. So but the first 6 weeks she could have said, I'm going to keep the baby. Yeah, because you're seen as the biological mother. And I think it's 6 weeks later, I was allowed to then adopt Ziggy. And I mean, had it have ever gone to court, Leon was the biological father. She was not genetically involved in, the making of little Ziggy. And so we probably would have ended up winning that. But we didn't even have to go there in our minds. Like, we had complete trust in each other, the three of us, that we just, it was just plain sailing. Yeah, it was really beautiful.
And you are pretty much 3 years on from us. So what would be your best advice to new parents?
Conscious parenting, like I'm trying to do that, and don't be on your phone.
Yes.
Like, don't try and do both. You won't be very good at responding to emails. You won't do your work well or parent well if you're trying to do both at the same time. So either go to work and baby goes to nursery, or have someone look after them, or parent. Don't be on your phones. I have to remind myself of that. I have to remind Leon of that. We're all addicted to our devices, but you cannot work and look after your child. That's not conscious parenting.
No. You also can't tube travel and work either. It's not. I think if you work, you need to work. I think so many of us waste our time trying to do work in inefficient circumstances, whether that be on the tube, on a bus, whether you're petting a dog, walking a dog, looking after your baby. It's just not a good way to work, is it?
Just being really intentional with your time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's important, isn't it? So yeah, that would be my advice. And it's I mean I for me personally, it's got better and better. Like, it's really challenging with these tantrums and stuff, but it's hilarious because they're finding their boundaries, and they're like asserting themselves, and it's cute. And you have to have your boundaries, because I'm such a softie, right? And I've had to learn to be like, when I've said no, hold that boundary. Don't say no, and then because he goes on and on and on, say okay then. That's not good parenting, is it? Because I'm naturally like that. I'm naturally like, no, oh, okay then. But actually you can't do that. It's confusing. And then they're like, well, there's no boundary there. But no doesn't mean no then, does it? So I'm learning that right now.
As a long term yoga practitioner, what do you think are the, well, it's hard to actually answer this question because you haven't lived a life without yoga, as it were. But are there any notable effects that yoga has had on you, do you think? Are there any times that you think actually that's probably yoga has really helped there?
I mean, I think lots of periods of my life it's been massively helpful, and I think the thing that springs to mind is that when I lost my parents so close together from cancer, like it was about a year apart, and I remember literally burying my mum and going to work at Yogahaven in Birmingham the next day because I had to teach a class, and I showed up and I taught the class. And without that community at the time and having yoga in my life at that time of like adversity and like sadness, I'm not sure what I would have done. Like, they carried me. You used to go to Yogahaven in Birmingham, didn't you?
Yeah, that's where I started doing hot yoga. Yeah, that became
yeah.
Do you know what? I initially went there to I'd moved back to Birmingham, and I went to the private school, and everyone else had gone, and all my school friends lived in like the posh areas. So I moved back to Birmingham not knowing anyone, had the charity job, was in my boxing gym every day. And I was like, I need to do something different. I need to meet people. Like I need to maybe like meet a girlfriend. And it was like, shall I do dancing or shall I do more yoga? Because I was doing yoga at home alone. Shall I do yoga more formally? So that was my agenda for going to.
That's a good one, man. It's a great place for men to meet women or men to meet men.
Well, I didn't meet anyone.
Well,
many years later.
Yeah.
Well, so actually, in that era in Birmingham, there were two fairly well-known teachers that we were practicing together. Well, there was Amber Vallow. Do you know Amber? So Amber, former Birmingham Royal Ballet, now works in Zaba.
I know Amber.
And then Melissa Wells.
Mel
Wells.
Yeah, she did my teacher training as well.
Like the green.
So when did you do it? You did it like
we didn't do trainings together, but we were both we were all in Yogahaven, Birmingham, practicing. I remember I used to try and compete with Amber, not knowing that she was a ballet dancer.
That's funny. Yeah. Mel did the training as well, a bit after you, I think. And you did it in what, 2012?
Maybe, yeah.
Yogahaven teacher training?
Yeah.
I think Mel was a couple of years later.
I've been doing some sound healing in her mastermind, actually, Mel Wells.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Let's talk some quick fires now, because we are eating your evening away.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, quick fires, right. So what are you reading at the moment?
Acid for the Children by Flea, the Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer. Bass player. It's brilliant.
So is he encouraging giving acid to kids?
He did a lot of acid as a child. It's not encouraging it at all. His story is incredible story. So he had a really challenging, difficult, slightly neglectful childhood. So he was literally doing acid as a like, I don't know, 12-year-old or whatever. And then he met Anthony Kiedis. They were at school together and they were wild kids. It's a great story, but they were musicians, and Flea was a jazz musician, and he's done like quite a lot of philanthropic work in LA, trying to encourage children from underprivileged backgrounds to get into music, jazz music and stuff. He's cool.
His story's kind of sad, isn't it? Because he was never giving it, from what I understand, not given any attention by parents. But then he realised when he has the instrument, whatever it was, trombone or whatever loud instrument he had, people listen to him.
And
that was his only way of getting attention.
Yeah.
Sad. And then quick fire from me. What would I say as a quick fire? Quick firing late at night. Like, for context to listeners, we've had a long day. We've got a baby. We've been travelling over the weekend. Nothing's quick firing for me at the moment.
No.
But what would be your biggest tip to anyone thinking about whether they should embark on a teacher training or not?
Oh, well, you know what? I always am so inspired by the people that come on my teacher training. And I think my biggest tip is, if you've been thinking about teacher training, you're probably ready to do it. Don't let fear hold you back. Like, there's never the right time. You are flexible enough. You are strong enough. You are going to get on with the people on the course because they're also like-minded. Like, these humans that I have the honor, like, I don't teach that much in studio at the moment, but I teach and I'm present on all of my teacher trainings a little bit. And in the residential weeks that we do, I'm always there for the whole week, but I try to be present on all of them. And I absolutely think it's an honor and a privilege to be part of their journey. And I'm always a little bit jealous that they're at that beginning part, because they're about to, you know, embark on this like life of yoga on and off the mat. And I've been brought to tears a lot recently by the students on my training, and their stories and their challenges that they've overcome. And yeah, I've just been like blown away by some of them. And yeah, just do it. Just stop thinking about it. Just do it, man.
And can you tell people where to find you, where to find what you do?
Oh, go to yogahaven.co.uk. There's a teacher training page on there. I also obviously have a Yoga Haven Instagram, which is my normal @yogahaven, but I've got an @yogahaven _teach Instagram, which I don't put too much effort in, but there is lots of testimonials and all of that. And yeah, just like look up Yoga Haven.
And it's looking really good at the moment. The Yoga Haven Instagram's looking really nice at the moment. Like, whoever's doing that, they're doing a nice
she's
job.
a lovely girl called Amy. Yeah, she's really lovely. So yeah, you know, it's not my bag, right? The social media. I feel like, you know, we're all busy, aren't we? But I'd rather be out walking with my dogs than scrolling on Instagram. And I do a bit of voluntary work for a Greyhound Protection UK, and that's my karma yoga. And I walk the rescued. We rehome, that charity rehomes greyhounds. From 16,000 greyhounds are killed every year from after they've been racing. Yeah, it's a big number, and they just shoot them or send them off to Spain or China. And so Greyhound Protection UK, I'm at the West Sussex branch, and I work there once a week, walking all of the dogs. There's like, we've got about 20 dogs right now. And that's like, yeah, I'd rather be doing that than kind of scrolling on the old socials.
I love it. Our friend just rescued one. And,
right. Well, they're beautiful because they don't need that much exercise. People think they do.
City dogs, aren't they? Like, he's got in a flat in Bermondsey, and they're near a park.
Yeah.
He's still muzzled, I think, because
it's
she.
Prey drive.
Yeah, because she'll kill something. But beyond that, they're really lovely animals.
Yeah, lots of them will get rid of that prey drive with, you know, rehabilitation. You can, and we have not only greyhounds there, but we have a lot of rescue lurchers that get picked up as strays, and you know, they do a week in the pound and then they're killed. So the people I work for at the charity, she'll take some of those when they're about to be put down, and we've got some really, really beautiful Saluki crosses and Whippet crosses and some beautiful dogs. So
you like a Saluki?
Oh, they're so.
You like a Saluki?
Salukis are
floppy
pretty.
hair.
Oh yeah,
the desert
dogs. I'm really into the skinny dogs.
So there we go, listeners. You can do a teacher training and do some hot yoga and rescue a greyhound. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
On your to-do list for
Takeaways.
this weekend.
Cool. Thank you so much, Allie.
So lovely to see you both. Really, really wonderful. Well done for everything you're doing. So proud of you.
Honestly Unbalanced.